Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to such a wonderful, huge event. And I'm pretty nervous. And I'm from Japan, and I started my own office after graduating university in 2007, and it's been about 12 years. And we've been working on, and I work with my partner. He's a friend from high school, and we know each other well. We also draw and make model together before studying architecture. So we really share a basic knowledge about creating forms or drawing things, and I think that is leading us to continue architectural practice until now, because we don't really discuss too much about the big letter architecture. And what we are always kind of discussing and in this, like 10 years, and we always ask ourselves, is it truly necessary? As you know, Tokyo is a city where there's full of buildings and no vacant space. There's housings, commercials, offices, and we're kind of enough with buildings, and we know it. But of course, as an architect, we want to build it. But there's this contradiction between myself and architect, and I don't want to kind of fake that to myself. I really want to make something that's truly necessary, maybe, so that thinking and making is something understandable as a precious thing. Otherwise, it just becomes a tool for commercial, or it's just for some people who likes it. So I really want to find out values instead of interest and what I like. So to begin with, this is our first project right after graduation, and it was not even a house. Architects usually have small projects, which is house. But for me, it was even smaller. It was just a fence in front of the house facing the street. And actually, this is my home. After graduating, I don't have any projects or anything, so I asked my parents whether they need a house. But of course, I still was, I was also living together with them. So, okay, that we're enough with house. So you don't have a house to design. But we have a fence. I mean, there was a concrete block wall in front of this, and a gate, a steel gate, that was deteriorating with the humidity and giving pressure to the street with this heavy concrete block, which might be a disaster when the earthquake occurs. So they wanted to change that. So we said, okay. So we'll just do the fence or the wall. And but it was quite interesting afterwards when we were kind of investigating what we should do or what we can do. And my parents and also my grandfather was asking for ventilation for the house, and this small gap between the house and the streets, which is less than 1.5 meters. They wanted to be a garden, and they wanted to be somewhere for the neighbors to kind of share as a space. And So we kind of started to think about making it with kind of mesh-like material, and we used expanded metal. It's going to be later shown, so we made it with a very weak material. As you can see in this photo, it's like a completely simple mesh, and we didn't want to create any pillars or intersecting solid material, so that because we don't want it to make it shadowy and make humid and so on. So what we tried to do was just folding this very fragile, soft material along the site, first like in a zigzag kind of shape, and then in the detail on the right, we also folded a little bit more to create a pillar-like kind of behavior as a structure, so that it stiffens the whole fence, the wall, so that will stand just with this simple mesh material. And this was after we were, actually constructing, and we realized that these just a simple wall kind of starts to behave something in between the house and the garden and the neighbor and the street, which is very important, I think, to create some boundary between the privacy and publicity. And so this fence works like as a laced curtain. So you can kind of extend your living room to the other side of the street, while people on the street can't see inside. With the color of this white mesh, and so we thought that it was maybe something faster to create, a cityscape maybe, not building a house and trying to change the city. Maybe just change this fence and just design the boundary is even more efficient and faster to completely change the city environment. And also not directly designing the room itself, maybe beyond the room, and what you can take in from the opening is actually more important to create an atmosphere inside the house. So this was something really important thing that we realized before starting to build architecture. So this is what it was like before. And it's on the north side of the house. So it was this dark place and humid, and all these ventilation, air conditioning machines, and these hot water boiling machines were like there. And but now we're having all these small elements also as an equipment for the living that's showcased with the fence. And I think it is nice to not to hide everything that you don't want to see and make the back. And we wanted to kind of make a well-going situation so that we can kind of admit everything. We don't kind of neglect things. So even the garden beyond this, behind the fence, even starts to grow. the wind changes the flow of the air and the moisture, so that the soil also changes, and all these greens started to grow, even inside the site, and it completely changes the condition of the whole site with just one fence, which we kind of overlook as an architect. And this was a research project. It's 2015 it was, and we were asked from Arcasia to do a research about our own country history, which Japanese architectural history, and try to kind of connect with our design. So it was an opportunity for young architects to kind of make the background of the office, which is a quite nice occasion to have. And this was the book we were kind of inspired. It says Ise Jingu, Ise Shrine, and Japanese Beauty. It's written by Igami. He's a historian. And sorry, it's in Japanese, but in one sentence, it was something very important again for us, that it was saying that there was no shrine back when, like in 600s, shrines didn't have shrines, which means shrines didn't have buildings. This was something very important, and a question, what it meant. And what it was about animism. It's called Iwakura Shinto, Iwakura Shinkyo, Iwakura belief, which worships these natural elements like trees, rocks, or rivers, or mountain. And there's each god everywhere, and they worship that as an element and space, I mean place. And after that, so that's the diagram of the Iwakura. So we have Iwakura, which is the rock, and then we have Himorogi, which just shows this kind of boundary of where the god is. And then number 3 is the shrine, which is like this size, where gods come down and kind of have connection with this world. So it was an intervention for God to land on the world. So it was just a small building. I mean, like a small intervention, that just shows that this is a place, this is a sacred place where we worship. And that was the shrine in Japan. But this changes after Buddhism comes in from the mainland and start to kind of combine with the building and the Buddha. And that's the shrines we see in the recent days. But before, it was just a place and an element. And I will quickly just show you these various scales of shrines we have still in near Nara. It's a bit south from Kyoto and Nara, and they still don't have a building, a shrine inside this shrine. And this is called Onigura. It's in the cedar woods, very deep forest, and there's a very winding road in between these cliffs, and this bold rock is the shrine. So, and Onigura is in Chinese letter. It means red rock. which it means that it contains steel inside, and it has this kind of red color spilling out from the cuts of the rocks, and so the contrast between these green and on also this red kind of vividly kind of grabs your eye. And also there's like a steel manufacturing really back from the old days. So they also worship this steel rock as a god. So you can still see these red part in the rocks. And so it's just one cliff just to see as a landmark. And this one is called Kamakura Shrine. It's near Onigura Shrine. When you just kind of get past through the cliffs and mountains, there is the sea, and this is a city where they kind of manufacture steel. And at the edge of the mountain, they have the shrine. And it's basically just, again, a rock with a rope and an intervention just showing the boundary of, and a gate where they say this is, the shrine. It is no building up in the mountains. So you can basically, see from the city, and also you can see all the city and the gao everywhere from this shrine. And this was, it's called Konoichi Shrine. It's also close to these shrines. And this is also a shrine with a rock. And it's only the composition of how they place the rock. And it's a sequence of different kinds of rocks and just creating the whole shrine site. And so basically you have the gate on the right, and then you go through it. You have the river on the left, the downside, and then you kind of turn right, and then they worship this cliff at the back, which is not visible as a whole. It just kind of fades away in your sight. It's a huge cliff and just a gate in front of it. And we were like especially interested in this Akakura Shrine, which is in the Cedar Forest just behind the Onigura Shrine that showed at the first, as a first example. And it's just a huge circular rock just placed on a steep slope. And this rock exists, the existence of this rock is completely changing the natural environment with its the mass of the rock creates the shadow and the moisture, keep the moisture, and this on top of this rock, it starts there is this kind of different level of forest existing in this shrine. And that was like the special thing maybe they thought, and they placed, they said this place is a shrine. So it's a rock inside this huge place. And at the overhang, they put a small intervention again to just pray. And what I thought about what's special about this place is not just about the belief, I thought, is more about the speed of nature is quite fast around this rock, because probably there's not enough soil that kind of stacks on top of the rock. which is different from the surroundings where soils have more deeper, amount. So there's this speed and vividness in this small trees that's creating this space very nice, and I thought this rock is making this structure of how this place kind of goes, makes the environment. So we were really interested in structure of place, how we can structure a place before building a building or creating space. That was our intention after this research. And this was in 2017 at Chicago Biennial, and we placed these two photos, again, Kamakura Shrine and our project right next to it. It's a bit awkward. It's to kind of, show as like a same photo with the shrine, but we wanted to compare and we wanted to show our intention about how we think about place, and by using this reference from the Japanese history of Iwakura. And the project was developed during the research of Iwakura. So it was kind of a parallel project. We were thinking and inputting and outputting at the same time. And we're calling it this project Initiative Roof. It's a renovation project. And we think that architecture is always kind of making the world smaller and smaller, dividing places into small spaces. And we thought, is there any way to make something and create more expanding space? I mean, expandable, like not shrinking, more expanding way of building. We wanted to make something kind of into like an opposite way with designing architecture. And it's an outside corridor in between an existing house and an annex, which is a study room. And it connects these small gardens, which was kind of segmented with the additional small annex study room. And we kind of wanted to connect everything and try to make this whole site as the house, not the building as the house. So it reflects these surrounding buildings and even these far sceneries as well, to kind of grabs everything very close to you and feel like, whole scenery is kind of the environment you're living in. So there's some kind of small intervention just beyond the boundary of the opening of the window, and so we're maybe kind of trying to make everything as an interior project, not making interior and exterior separately. And it has these small details of how we can kind of adapt to this natural outside environment with using its own load to bend, and also how we can make the water to kind of, so it's actually a bit sloped with the drainage rings. We're pulling that down to the ground about 35 kilograms, so that it deforms the whole roof, so the water goes down, leads to the ground, and actually stiffens the whole structure. And also these handrails, we wanted to make it more like a rope kind of texture, so we actually made it not straight, it's bended. We didn't want to make kind of straight, narrow, thin handrail with burning. We usually burn it to make it, straight, because it always kind of bends with its own load, but we said it's okay because it's outside. So so it's basically a separated eve that we have on the existing building. We try to remake this kind of how you take in the light inside the house and try to create shadow in the summer to connect with the annex at the same time. That's why we separated from the existing building and made it higher, so that you have the shadow, and also at the winter you don't kind of this roof doesn't bother the sunlight coming into the first floor and the second floor, so which makes this corridor a bit higher and different from human scale. And this project is called, this project is called Mark the Land. It's a house right next to a forest. It's a park, and there is a fence in between the site and the park. And this is also a renovation project. And what we were thinking in this project was the existing building was actually damaged with the humidity, and also they couldn't even open the window to the forest because there's insects and humidity and the shadow. But their intention, the existing building had a big window, even though it's kind of a normal house. They had a concept to kind of face the forest, but since they just opened the window and made the balcony like an ordinary kind of way, it was actually keeping away from the forest because it never worked. And the curtain was closed and the window was never opened. And and I think that the problem here was that we tried to extend interior to outside to create exterior-like interior, which is the balcony. But these facts that occur outside is critical to living with. So people shuts the window and never kind of connects with the outside. So we thought we should make something in between the forest and the house, so that we can maybe kind of redesign the relation between these two things with this another element. So basically we made this kind of concrete structure in between the house, which is a bit separated from the house, about 19 centimeters separated from the house, so that we have a bit more light and wind going through the facade instead of making a very dull, humid situation with the extension of interior as a balcony. And we also made this balcony into 2 levels, which works as a bench. Because even though you have a chair on the balcony, the chair is kind of meant to be in the inside. So when it gets even slightly dirty, we kind of don't want to sit. So I thought it might be more kind of effective if we can kind of just design these 2 levels of concrete, a rough concrete, so that it kind of blends into this forest and the park, which you feel kind of more open and easier to sit. And we also designed this hanging clothing with the handrail, so that it doesn't bother the scenery of the forest. So we basically focused on the levels of the balcony, 2 levels, and also the handrail, which is also something very distracting when you have a handrail. The handrail is also always about 1.1 meters high, and but that height, when you sit on the chair, it's just crossing, it's right across your eye level, which also distracts again the connection and the view to the forest. So this changing of levels of using this bench actually creates this handrail scale to 1.5 meters, and the back is 1.1. So when you sit down, you have the view through this middle part where it's crossing, where you don't have distraction through to the forest. So this is kind of when you sit, you have this kind of openness to the forest. So it's a very small thing, but it really affects the living. I really was hoping that these people living here will have even 5 or even 3 minutes in a day sitting on this bench. I think will change the living, and also living right next to the forest, it has more meaning to it, even 3 minutes, I think. So we really focused on this point. So this was before. This is an ordinary way of building. So that's the view that kind of goes through when you sit. And this project is House with City. It's a newly built project, and it's on beside the bus street where it was a market street before, but the city condition changed, and now there are vacant commercial stores, and changing into residentials. So this one was also the one like that. So the site is very narrow. It's about 3 meters wide and 15 meters of depth. And the bus rides, and they live in this kind of condition. And we always think that if we have maybe equal amount of maybe budget or time to create outside and inside at the same time, I think the city and the living condition will change a lot more. So, and I think that will be more of a connection throughout the living and the city, and that's what we kind of tried. We evenly designed the outside and inside. So basically, we lifted up the house about 4.2 meters, where you don't get distracted with the bus, and also you have natural light coming in and natural wind coming in through the window. Otherwise, if you build from the first floor, you have to really just kind of design how you reflect the light from the top light, and then you have the gate right in front of this bus street, and it's going to be an awkward situation as a house. It will be completely separated, and again, the city will be divided into very small and small and small places. So we didn't want to do that. We wanted to be naturally make the environment, and that was just by lifting up the house. So basically, the first floor is just nothing. It can be a garden. It can be a place. The client actually rents to the commercial stores at lunchtime, because they don't use it at lunch. They sell some kind of bread or vegetables during the day, and then so the street is on the right. So you go all the way to the dead end, and then you climb up the staircase to the second floor, and you have the entrance and the kitchen and all these equipments you need for living. And on the third floor, there has the 2 bedrooms, and the view is kind of nice. And so in this kind of like really tight situation, we have to think about how we're going to maintain this house when it's kind of broken or maintained during this long time. So we made this place as a maintenance place. So we had to really place how we will, place all these plumbings and everything below the house, so that we can easily access to everything. Because these 2 gaps are about 250 centimeters where no one can go. So even the exterior walls, we had to think with constructing without any ceilings or making holes of ventilation. We had to remove all that. We had to make it maintenance free. We can't do anything after building. So we even built this house exterior from inside the building. So that was our intention, how to maintain this house. Also, it was like a design. It was an important phase for design. So this is when you climb up, and so it's a bit shifted from the back. So you have the light coming in, and also the house at the back have light and wind together. So it's actually doing this this designing is about for client, but maybe if somehow maybe can give back something to the surroundings, surrounding buildings, I think there is some kind of meaning to this building to be built. So so we were kind of thinking of this kind of well-going situation with the house itself and the surroundings. So these windows, small windows, are the next door buildings. So this is the gap between the house and the next door apartment, the buildings. So you have the entrance, and you go up the house. So then you have the view through these streets, and also the third floor. Since we have made the exterior equal height as the building, you have a bit of a higher situation from comparing to the surroundings at the back. So you have all the way through to like Shibuya, and you have like a splendid view at the bedroom. And we even can go up to the rooftop. And this house was, since it was in a commercial district, it can maybe be sold to a second hand. And in these days, even clients or us, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So we wanted to make this house as not just a house. We wanted to make just a simple box so that we can always kind of change the interior as the program or the usage changes. So we didn't want any walls for the to create anti-earthquake kind of. So yeah, we have this restriction. We have to have a certain amount of walls to avoid collapsing. But if we have walls, then we have to make that wall as like maybe a toilet or something, and then we can never change it. So we wanted to make just a simple tunnel as a house. So we made this window frame as a very strong element in this house, so that it can help all the amount of earthquake load. So this window frame is very important for this house. So you have the view through this street in front, which you feel like swimming in the city, which is quite nice. And they use in many kinds of ways. It's a storage, it's a place for workshop, a garden for the kid. Can be anyhow. So the composition, the section is like this. So you have all the airflow to the back house and also sunlight for the surroundings. And we even have, so since we don't have any pipes in between the buildings, we can still have the sunlight coming in very deep, all the way back of the site, which is quite nice to have. And this was the site, we were inspired that we have this publicity, very connective space on front of the site, and then as you go to the back, you have this privacy. So we thought that it's kind of a great site for a house to have a good balance of these public and private. And this project is, we think that also foundation is something very connected to the ground. So if you want to maybe connect the living condition with the outside, maybe it's better to design or think about the foundation before the house that comes on top. So that was our question we had, and we tried that in this project. It's called Living Pool. It's again, it's just right beside the mountain. The client really loved this scenery of mountains and the place itself. But when you go inside the house, there's no connection. They're lifted up about 80 centimeters because it's a snowy kind of area. It's up in the north of Tokyo, so north of Japan. So it's really separated from the ground. And this is a model the client brought at the first meeting. He's an artist, so he made the model by himself. He asked me, I want to live like this. What should I do? And then, so there was like, okay, there's nothing we can do. We tried many plans and tried to propose something that looks like architecture, but we even don't think that's working. And we thought that the client's model was showing the most reasonable plan and the livable plan. So we thought we have to admit that. We have to find our way to contribute what we can do again for them with the designing. And so that's why we kind of started to think about the foundation, which is below the house. So we opened up the floor, and there was this humidity and the darkness and this, even though the house would be maybe, refurbished in a very nice house, when you like just rip the floor, you have this below. It's kind of awkward. So we thought that we should do something to it. So we basically made a huge bowl-like foundation. We added a foundation with also inserting heating pipes so that it becomes a very warm bowl to live. And so this wooden part, the flooring part, was the existing level, and all the living spaces are sunken down to the same level as the outside ground. And by changing this foundation behavior, the window behavior changes. It acts as more as a French window, or which you have more view to diagonal towards the sky, not just kind of horizontal scenery and looking down to the ground. We have more to the sky. And also reflects all these lights and everything underneath this house, and it connects these ventilations and light and everything and come together as a whole environment. So this family lives in the foundation. So even the sunlight also goes deeper inside because the level sunken down to the ground. You have more sunlight coming in deeper to the house and makes the house lighter and have more of an atmosphere with the whole situation. Okay. So another question we have is that window is made to be something for interior, to take in the openings are something to take in conditions from outside to inside. But window is placed in between outside and inside. So why not we have a window for outside? That was our question. It's always for interior, and we wanted to think about a window for somehow to be exterior. And so that's the project. It's called Boundary Window. And this is also a renovation project. It was a two-story RC apartment converting into a weekend house for one owner. And he didn't want, ending up having like these walls dividing into rooms. He just wanted a clean, huge room with kitchen and sofas and seats and so on. So it was, the plan he made was kind of simple. But he was kind of questioning himself how he can have new connection between the garden, and so that they have a condition with the outside and inside together as a whole living condition. So instead of kind of trying to propose designing the interior, because he came up with a lot of, like Pinterest images and Instagram images that he want to create. So let's say we said, okay, you can do it, and we can't say it's not good or we don't like it. It's more about where we can again find what we can propose to him. So so he was talking about the garden a lot. So instead, we thought about creating a window, which is the boundary between the building side and the garden side. And we took off all the aluminum sashes from the existing openings, and we created a window of about 14 meters long and 9 meters high, which is extended to the rooftop level. So it's a two-floor building, but it has three-floor height window. The window is actually bigger than the building. And this huge membrane-like glass reflects the sunlight from the south side to the shadowy garden, which is the shadow is made from the adjacent housing placed beyond the garden. So we wanted to kind of give back and share the light, not just taking into the interior. We wanted to kind of give back to the garden so that the winter sunlight condition completely changes for this garden and have better view from inside to outside. Because even though if you have a nice interior, if you look through the window, you have shadowy, dark scene. I think it's not something rich as a place. So we wanted to kind of light that up so that even though the interior changes in the time, I think the basic condition doesn't change. So I think that's something we should maybe propose. So that was our intention. And he wanted to create some connection between the garden and the building more at the second floor as well. So we divided the window doors at the level of the handrail so that it acts as a door sliding rail. And when you open the window, there's only the handrail just left beyond the opening of the existing building. And also this heat we gain from this glass membrane. We kind of just use the chimney effect to take all the heat up to the rooftop and just get rid of it. So this is the window. And all these were calculated with the balance and weight. So it has to be easily moved by human, and also it has to be strong enough. I mean, strong enough to stand on its own at the typhoon season and everything. So we started to calculate about how it's going to bend, and that's how we kind of made the proportion of the doors and divisions. So from the interior, you have a small scale window frames that kind of naturally engages with the interior small elements, but from the outside, it has this huge facade that kind of have relation to more like huge trees and has kind of a publicity kind of scale that kind of you feel the garden more rich. So this is the rooftop, and it reflects and so on. So you have this kind of same scale of tree and window. And this was before, and so we basically took down the balcony and the eave and added a completely new facade to the building. Right, so I think it's about time. So I was thinking about showing some interior projects. So it's an ESOP project. We also wanted to connect this interior retail designing also, not just keeping its own world in the space surrounded by the wall. We wanted to engage with the surrounding and work well. And so we used this reflection and also this huge door kind of element to make the back of house situation when the house when the store is open, in between the shopping mall wall becomes the back of house and so on. Okay, so yeah, so basically we want to really have, in a way, it's an efficiency maybe. We want to share space. We want to we want to make the world connected, not building a building to kind of separate everything into segments where you can see everywhere in the world. And so I think the concept of place, I think needs to be more investigated rather than just keeping this architecture design just for space. And so we want to cultivate more of place before building the building, so that everything becomes more connected and well, going situation that it can be shareable with many people. Yeah, thank you.